In this video, you see the most modern Russian tank T-90 break through with a clumsy and useless protective structure above the tank turret. The tank is on a mission, but a $500 Ukrainian drone easily disables the expensive Russian tank, which costs $4 million. After the drone hits, the crew panics and the tank becomes uncontrollable. The crew abandoned their tank, leaving it in the field. Now it can be easily destroyed by another FPV drone. In this video, we already see how the same tank was seriously damaged and disabled. This is precisely how the Javelin missile operates. Later, this tank was completely burned. The Ukrainians also burned several abandoned Russian armored vehicles. As a result, the Russian advance was stopped by the coordinated actions of the Ukrainian forces. However, the enemy infantry still managed to break through to the urban area in the northern part of the Bakhmut city, and Ukrainian tanks have to drive them out from there. In these destroyed houses, the war is fought for every wall and every stone. To push the enemies out of the city, Ukrainian forces are increasingly using tanks. Tanks are targeting enemy infantry, armored vehicles, and other transport vehicles. Sometimes, tanks leave the city limits to repel the invasion of enemy infantry and prevent them from penetrating the city. When returning back, tanks are covered with a smokescreen. In the small town of Ugledar, the Russian military launched a major offensive. More than 150 units of military equipment advanced to Ukrainian positions. Their goal was to break through the Ukrainian defense and capture the town. The Russians assembled a powerful armored fist and were confident of their success. Advancing, they lined up in columns. No one expected the Russians to make the same mistake they made in the beginning of the war.
If you subscribe, may God give you $1 million.
As you know, Ukrainian artillerymen really like a large accumulation of armored vehicles. The Russians intended to break through the Ukrainian positions, but something went wrong. The Ukrainian military closely monitored the situation and began to act in time. A little later, we will tell and show you what happened. In this video, you see another column of attacking Russian forces. The Ukrainians destroyed the entire column. All tanks without exception. Later, the Russians filmed on the same road where the column of their armored vehicles was destroyed, and we can see the losses they suffered. Russian tanks always burn well. This Russian T-80 tank was hit by a Ukrainian FPV drone. Upon impact, it exploded into small pieces. On the way to Avdiivka, the Russians are losing a lot of their equipment even before reaching the battlefield. The road is strewn with destroyed tanks and APCs, making it practically impossible to pass unnoticed. This Russian APC is no exception. For those who manage to get past this road, defeat awaits on the battlefield, as happens to this armored vehicle. It was hit by an FPV drone and later exploded. Russians continue their attempts to advance near Bakhmut using tanks and armored vehicles. The tanks are hiding behind a smokescreen, while the infantry is crawling on the ground in fear. A tank equipped with a mine-clearing device advanced forward. Its mission is to clear a path for the other tanks through the minefield. A Ukrainian drone dropped a grenade on it, but unfortunately missed. Then the tank was hit by a Soviet RPG anti-tank missile. Although the tank remained undamaged, the crew was likely stunned by the explosion and could not continue with the mission. One of the Russian armored personnel carriers was hit by a Javelin missile. Shortly thereafter, another vehicle was destroyed by a direct hit. The Russians were forced to abandon the infantry carrier and take cover in trenches. Another tank from the same group attempted to maneuver but was blown up by a mine. Its track was detached and the crew abandoned the tank. One more tank eventually attempted to leave the battlefield but was hit by a Javelin missile. This is evidence from the trajectory of the missile, which came from above. They sent heavy flamethrower systems, TOS, there. I already talked about this weapon on my channel. This very formidable and dangerous weapon fires thermobaric rockets. The Russians use it when things are going very badly and the infantry can't cope. Here's what it looks like.
If you subscribe, may God give you $1 million.
Fortunately, the range of the TOS system is not so deep and reaches only 10 miles. This allows the Ukrainian army to track them down and destroy them with a HIMARS precision missile or Excalibur precision projectiles. These projectiles are so accurate that they can even hit a moving target. The Russians simply have no chance of breaking through the Ukrainian defenses. Another TOS-1 Buratino was also destroyed at night. FPV drones have practically replaced 122mm and 155mm artillery. That's why they are so important, and their production needs to be increased. Unlike conventional artillery, drones have incredible maneuverability and precision. In this example, see how it works. Ukrainians tried to hit a Russian tank with conventional artillery shells, but they fall short without damaging the tank. However, a few seconds later, the tank was hit by an FPV drone, forcing the Russians to abandon the tank and hide among the trees. Meanwhile, Ukrainian soldiers shell them with rocket projectiles, launching them from a civil BMW car. Friends, thank you for watching my channel. Leave your mark by liking this video. I promise you that a new video will be released on our channel soon. The enemy is not allowed into the city. Ukrainian soldiers rode out on an armored Italian-made Iveco vehicle to repel the advance of Russian infantry. The Russians opened fire, but the windshield withstood a direct hit from an enemy bullet aimed at the driver. Throughout the battle, the windshield endured numerous bullets, and the soldiers returned alive after completing their mission. Meanwhile, Bakhmut is becoming more and more like a ghost town. Hundreds of houses have turned into ruins, leaving peaceful people homeless. It hardly makes sense to rebuild the city in the future. Perhaps it would be easier to build a new city, leaving Bakhmut as a monument to future generations. Recently, the Russians have begun to use their Lancet kamikaze drones more often, destroying valuable examples of Ukrainian weapons. In these footage, you can see how a Russian kamikaze drone destroys a Ukrainian RM-70 MLRS. The explosion is huge as the shells detonated. RM-70 was delivered to Ukraine by the Czech Republic. The system can fire various types of missiles, including precision-guided, cluster, and incendiary missiles up to 15 miles. The Russian infantry attempting to attack again encountered the high effectiveness of Ukrainian FPV drones. In this attack, the Russians lost all of their armored personnel carriers. Every single one of them. This abandoned Russian APC is well protected, and it is filled with ammunition. Struck by a Ukrainian FPV drone, the winter jackets of Russian soldiers left on the roof of the APC caught fire. This led to the ignition of the entire armored vehicle, which in turn resulted in the detonation of the ammunition. The armored vehicle burned long and bright, warming the hearts of Ukrainian soldiers.